Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome in. How's everyone doing today? Hiya, Foppy. Oops, I forgot to do that. Okay, there we go. Now everything is as planned. I got a new kitten today. I named him Cooper. Coop for short. Technically it wasn't even my plan. It was my mom's impulse, and I didn't necessarily dissuade her from it though, so I helped enable her. It's orange ginger tabby. Wednesday you'll probably do a half art stream and work on page. Yay! Try and make me grow. Yay! And now my two existing cats are just now in between of growling at new cat and trying to get into the computer room till I close them out of here so they don't bother me while I read. Try and make me grow. Yay! I like growing. I would love to be able to grow IRL. Grow my channel, grow IRL, grow my tuber. Be less of a gremlin. Gremlins are fun too, so. I'm still trying to figure out everything I'll need before surgery as well. Make me eat my slime vegetables. What are slime vegetables? That just sounds like vegetables that have gone bad. And that just sounds gross. It just sounds like veggies that have decided to rot. Not just that. So in theory, I don't know. In theory, we should be able to get this book done before my surgery. In theory. We might need a... I read today, read done next Monday. That's basically the end of it. And then maybe when I get back to doing reading streams, I could start with the next series in the universe, which is Dane's series, which is also my favorite. Although they're not necessarily not that these books aren't my favorites as well. I just favorite of favorites. Ow. Look at me, I'm actually on time for once. Ew. Although I did forget to bring up anything to drink, so I might disappear to get some liquids at some point. Yeah, not much updates. It was a boring day today. Other than getting new cat. Here, well. There we go. That is oh wait. Last time on Storytime telling. Last time on DBZ. I always do that joke, but it's always the first thing that comes to mind. Prior. Last time it was Alana's official return back into official homecoming, so meeting everyone that's she missed over the year that she'd been traveling. Did some sword sparring, and at the end of the chapter she presented Thayet to King Jonathan and basically saw that was like, yeah, this is a good idea to set them up. And she presented to him the Dominion Jewel in front of all the courts. Excuse me. Anywho's. Might need to buy new plugs soon. I'm thinking earplugs or ear stretch plugs. Yeah, the smaller sizes tend to stretch fairly fast. And then if you don't want them stretching further, take them out at night and sleep very weird. Although mine are kind of stuck at, have been kind of stuck at 2 gauge. No, it's F. I had been at 2 gauge and then I took them out for a bit and needed to drop back to. I dropped back to 6 and then moved back up to 4, and 6 was still. I wear them Nickums, but not overnight because I'm not quite ready to risk it. Yeah. Well, considering how fast your ears size up. Missy's eyes are being freaking 12s. Yeah.
Hi, butt spot.
Yeah, you're not liable. You're not liable to bounce back quite fast that fast because 12s are quite small. So you'd be going from like 5mm to 2mm, so. Well. Ow. Okay. Hey. Book time. Chapter 7. The next morning, Jonathan called a meeting of his most trusted advisors. Drake likes you, Foppy. Okay. The next morning, Jonathan called a meeting of his most trusted advisors. Miles, Gary, the provost, Duke Gareth, Duke Baird, Raoul, and Alana. Feeling uneasy, Alana went. In the last year, she'd grown more used to taking action than sitting in meetings. Also, she was unsure of her place in such a gathering. She was a knight. All the others had great responsibilities or wisdom, like Miles. She didn't even hold a fief. I mean... Right, because I would have gone to... Because right now... whatchamacallit would have gone to Tom. Using him on both screens just now. Or you. You're getting gang stared at by Drake. On both sides. Arriving early, she found the king to be in a small council chamber. He rose and kissed her cheek. Thank you for coming, he said. I hate to plunge into things just when you've come home, but we have a great deal to do. As she took a seat, a little way down the table from him, he asked, have you given some thought to the place you'll hold in my reign? Alana was startled by the question. What place? I never thought I'd hold any place. Not really. Although, it would be nice to have something to do, she admitted. I like roaming around, but I like it far better when I have a purpose. Maybe Liam is happy wandering from country to country like the wind. I feel as if I'm a sort of weapon. A weapon must have someone to wield it, or just lies around rusting. She grinned, suddenly embarrassed. Listen to me. Next thing you know, I'll start sounding like our old philosophy master. Jonathan groaned. That old bore. Gary peered inside. Is this a private gathering, or can anyone come in? He took a chair, thumping a stack of documents on the table in front of him. Seeing Alana's horrified look, he said kindly, don't worry, the papers aren't for this. They're documents I refer to constantly, so I carry them around. It saves waiting for a servant to fetch them. Gary, how awful, she exclaimed. Nonsense, Duke Gareth's son retorted. I had no idea before how interesting a kingdom's business can be. To put diverse things like rainfall, the number of people leaving their farms, and the price of iron goods together, and find out how they affect each other. and Gary has shifted from being a knight to an accountant. He'll go on all day if you let him, Raoul interrupted as he took his seat. The Lord Provost sat beside the big commander and nodded a greeting. Alana nodded back. Raoul went on. Me, I have no talent for administration. Give me a good horse and a patrol any day. You underestimate yourself, Raoul, Jean said. Vizier, love him, he explained to Alana. He's made a good impression on the Northerners, and the foreign soldiers, and the king's own as well. Alana beamed at her large friend, who blushed. I always knew you'd be a credit to us, she teased him. When she saw Duke Gareth at the door, Alana got up and went to greet her teacher. Hiding her shock, she knelt before him. The Duke, always lean, was rail thin. Streaks of gray had turned his hair a muddy yellow-brown. Gary's father looked Alana over as she rose. Finally, he smiled. "You have lived up to your promise," he said quietly. "We're all very proud of our Lioness. Welcome home." Coming from Duke Gareth, who had always been sparing of praise, it was the highest honor she could receive. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. She blinked tears away. "You're very kind. I tried to be a credit to my training. To you." She bowed herself back to her chair as the Duke sat beside Gary. The others busied themselves with papers, pretending not to notice. Baird and Miles arrived together while Alana mastered herself. The Duke greeted her cheerfully. At the reception the night before, he'd complimented her on her work as a healer among the Bazir. Miles winked at her as he settled into place. Alana fidgeted as servants put out water, paper, ink, and fruit. "How long will I be stuck here before I can go riding?" she wondered. "I don't have any place at councils like this." Jonathan cleared his throat, and the conversation stopped. "Thank you all for coming. I know the 60 days until the coronation seems like a great deal of time, but we have much to do." He glanced at Duke Gareth. "I've been given some thoughts to the appointment of a king's champion." Alana's throat went dry. "Uncle Gareth was my father's. It seems to have been an easy post for him." "Thank the gods," the Duke said dryly. "None of the others were." Jonathan joined the company's chuckling before he went on. "Except for taking part in the coronation of my father, he was never called on to represent or defend the throne. I think many have forgotten the post exists. Uncle no longer wants it." Duke Gareth nodded. "We feel someone young should be champion. A proven warrior, of course. One who is known to our people and our neighbors." She saw all too clearly the direction this was taking. "Raoul!" Alana croaked, looking at the Knight Commander. Grinning, Raoul shook his head. "Or Gary?" She tried as Gary tugged at his mustache to cover a smile. "Both fine, strong fellows, liked by—" "No," Jonathan said firmly. The others in the room fought their amusement. "I want them where they are. Raoul with King's Own, and Gary as Prime Minister." "Joffrey of Maron?" She wiped sweat from her upper lip. "Noble, far more respectable than me." "I've made up my mind." The provost was the last to grin as John spoke. All the others had seen such confrontations between the prince and his obstinate squire. "You'll make enemies," Alana said flatly. "There's never been a female champion. Not even when women could be warriors. Not in Tartal." "That's true," Miles said. "And it's understandable that you would be concerned about your standing in the eyes of the people. There are some still who feel a lady knight is unnatural. And at first there was a lot of feeling against it. Even the king..." He stopped and looked at John. "But a lot of that has changed." See, this is the one decent thing post-puberty John does. And then he walks back the female knight in Kel's time, or even his own daughter's time. And not necessarily walks it back, but I was like gonna say Sandry, Kel on probation for the first year. Like the one, yeah, like everything post John does after is just like meh. Because Klassen had wanted to become a knight, and he told her no. Like it or no, you're a legend. After the bazaar and winning your shield, the provost said in his blunt way, girls play at being Lioness. I saw one chasing her brother down the street, waving a stick and calling for the Conte Duke to submit to her sword. The men laughed. Lana blushed and continued to shake her head. Should we call a minstrel and have him sing all the Lioness songs in his memory? Duke Baird asked, his eyes kind. The newest one is in which the Lioness and the dragon defeat whole armies of Saren mercenaries. I like it, although now that I see you again, I remember you aren't 10 feet tall. The Bazier are for you, Rebel added. You're the woman who rides like a man. You also helped to bring down the Black City. The other one to do that will be the king. Your own tribe would be the first to say it's your right to stand beside John. I love that shit. A lot of short as heck, right? Heck, my headphones are annoying me. One sec. Okay, wow. That. Hello? One sec. I can't hear myself anymore. That. What the heck? Oh. Weird. Okay. apparently that was a button. Okay. Okay, that's a bit better. Where was I? Okay, there we go. Jonathan met her eyes, his gaze friendly but determined. And let's not forget that you journeyed into the stuff of fables and brought back the Dominion jewel. He took it from his belt purse and set it on the table, where it shimmered. This alone would cause you to be given a high place, even without everything else you've done. So say thank you, Alana. Jonathan, she whispered, knowing it was useless. Say thank you, Alana, Miles told her gently. She looked at the others, but they weren't looking at her. They watched the jewel, speculating or wondering as their natures dictated. She realized then that even they had changed the way they thought about her. Only John met her eyes, and he would give no quarter. She had earned this honor. Did she really want to refuse? You said you wanted to be useful, John pointed out. Alana had to grin. Trapped by my own tongue, he thought. Thank you, Jonathan, she whispered. Man, I wish I didn't have to give quarters, but I got it in front of the bus. Wrong quarters. He smiled. You won't regret it. Or at least, I won't. He gathered in everyone's attention. Let us discuss the situation in Tortal. I refer to the interesting rumor that my reign is cursed, and that I will be unseated from the throne. As it stands, there is no situation, growled the provost. He ran his fingers through his hair in vexation as he explained. It's all rumor and whispers. There are no plots afoot, none that I can find, except that Rowland of Malvin is loose. And he's still got followers. When I get my hands on him, he'll give me their names. He closed his black gloved hands with a predator's grin. And Duke Roger? Asked Duke Baird. Innocent as a bird, said Gary with disgust. His every movement can be accounted for. He either studies manuscripts and scrolls with Master Lord Tom, or he's in plain view of the courts. Does anyone watch Alex of Tiragan? Alana wanted to know. He was Roger's squire. The provost, Raoul, and Gary exchanged glances. Alex, we don't know about, Gary admitted. He locks himself for hours in his palace rooms. He's in one of the old wings, where the floor plans have been lost, the provost explained. It's possible there's passages in and out there we know little of. But we've no proof, of course, unless His Majesty gives us a king's writ. We cannot search Sir Alexander's rooms without evidence of wrongdoing. I won't give such a writ, Jean said. If I give one now, with only rumor and imagination to support it, I'll issue the next one more easily. If I wantonly break into any of Alex's homes, even the one he keeps in my own palace, what is to stop me from breaking into yours, of all my subjects? I am the one least able to break the law. Let's see what the news of the jewel does over the next few weeks, Miles suggested. Send out messengers until even the children know we have it. Perhaps knowing it's in the Majesty's possession will give people confidence in his reign. And we'll stay vigilant, Gary promised. I'd hate to learn 60 days from now that there's a fire under all this smoke. They went on to other topics. It was noon by the time the meeting drew to a close. Jonathan signaled Alana to remain behind while he showed the others out. She obeyed, still considering all that she'd heard since meeting Raoul in Port Udiaper. Jonathan closed the door after Gary came back to Alana at the table. Please don't feel that being champion traps you in some way, he said, somewhat concerned. We're far past the era when the champion had to defend the king's law with his sword. I imagine you'll have all the time in the world to continue roaming. Alana smiled at him. That's good. It's not that I don't like being at home. I just know there are places I haven't seen. I'll always be here when you need me, though. That's a comfort. An awkward silence descended until she asked abruptly, Are you still courting that princess I heard about? Josiane? The one I met last night? Jonathan blushed and shook his head. She likes being a princess too much. And she's cruel. She hides it well, but she is. He fiddled with the papers in front of him. Are you jealous? He asked sharply. I noticed you didn't waste time in finding somebody to replace me. 2 somebodies, if you count George and Liam Ironarm. It was Alana's turn to blush. I'm not jealous, she said at last. I just thought you had better taste. Jonathan stared at the table. My offer of marriage stands. If you want. She looked at him. Part of her wanted to say yes, but it was a very small part. I don't know if you've noticed, John, but we're very different people these days. I didn't realize how different until this council meeting. It's funny, he replied, thinking. I look at you and realize you've been to places I'll never visit. He smiled regretfully. He turned into a hero when I wasn't watching. Don't say that. I'm still me. Alana walks over to sit on the table in front of him. She took his hand, and feeling more at ease, she tickled his palm. John, if we were married, we'd make a mess of things. You know it as well as I do. Now he did look at her. I don't go back on my word, he explained. His eyes gave his other feelings away. I asked for your hand. His obvious relief hurts, but it didn't keep her from knowing she did the right thing. And I said no. Thank you, but no. I love you, John. We've been through a lot, but what we want from life, she pointed to his papers. You like this king business. I like action. I like to say what I think. She saw a rough sketch half hidden by other documents and pulled it free. Don't you? John started to say, but he was too late. Alana waved the drawing of Thayet in front of him, grinning wickedly. You still want to marry me, sire? Or are you just checking to see if the road is clear? Jonathan was beet red with embarrassment. Don't tease. You know I'd marry you if you'd said yes. And thank the gods, one of us has sense, he exclaimed, examining the drawing closely. Your artwork has improved. The one you did of Dahlia made her look like a cow. Pursing her lips, she added thoughtfully, though now that I think of it, maybe that was your subject matter. John laughed so hard tears gathered in the corners of his eyes. When he regained his self-control, he said, I need you home, if only because you make me laugh. I'm not sure that's a compliment, she said dryly as she gave him the sketch. Jonathan caught her hand, his eyes serious. I love you too, Alana. You're a part of me. My sword arm. She kissed his forehead. Fine, I like that. But you need a queen too. Yet would be a good one. Are you sure? He wanted to know. Are you positive we couldn't make a good marriage? She returned his look, equally serious, and he sighed. You're right. Still, it would have been interesting. Her head spinning from the events of the last 3 days, Alana went to Earth. She was all but invisible at palace social functions. Jonathan, knowing that she needed time to think, left her alone. Instead, he asked for Thayet when he called at House Alau, taking her for rides or to the palace. He invited Buri on these excursions, guessing accurately that the little Khmer would prefer several deaths to making polite conversations with noblemen. Thayet could make no threats that would cause Buri to act as chaperone at such times. Instead, the princess's companion joined Alana as she refamiliarized herself with Chorus in the palace grounds. Alana introduced her to the remnants of George's courts and to her friends among the palace hostlers and servants. They joined Liam in extended hours of exercise and sparring. George took them in picnics beside the river and on explorations to the city's catacombs. Buri learned how to pick pockets, and Alana relaxed in the thief's company. The pair found themselves drilling the city's urchins, boy and girl, in staff and swordplay, and running races with local youths. Alana brought Buri into the morning practice sections of the palace, where the Khmer met Raoul, Gary, and the other knights and squires. Many of these young noblemen, particularly those who didn't know Alana well, were unsure of what to make of two females, one an unproven stranger, joining their practice. Their attitudes soon changed to respect for Buri and awe for Alana. Because the body concerned was hers, Alana didn't know how much she'd improved under Liam's teaching. If she beat her old friends, which she often did, she decided they had been riding chairs too much recently. Alex never challenged her. George could still best her with knives, and Liam always won. It keeps me humble, she told Coram with chagrin after one session with Liam. Coram laughed and ruffled her hair. She watched Duke Roger. He was often present when she visited Tom. These glimpses were enough to confirm her feeling that she trusted him less than ever. She relayed her suspicions to everyone who mattered. There could never be too many eyes on the Duke. Still, he continued to act conspicuously and innocent. Instead of easing her fears, such behavior only increased them. The days slipped away. She was fitted for dresses, which she wore during quiet evenings with her family and on leisure excursions with George or her friends at court. Summer began with the June festival of Beltane. Since this was the time of year men approached her their chosen ladies. The excuse being the custom of leaping over fires hand in hand to ensure a bountiful harvest. She looked for George to renew his courtship. Certainly, he'd had time to see that she no more belonged to Liam than to the moon. George, however, remained simply friendly. After his enthusiastic greeting on her return, he showed no other signs of warmer feelings. "I'm doomed to be an old maid," she told Faithful mournfully, surveying her image in the looking glass the morning of the festival. "There was a time you wanted to be a spinster," he reminded her as he washed his glossy fur. Guy who understands boundaries. Wild, right? If I remember right, it's because she asked him to. Basically, she basically kind of said, he basically kind of said, "I won't chase you unless you give me permission to." So. It is kind of her fault. She hasn't really made it clear that she's interested in him. Showing interest in him. In her. There was a time you wanted to be a spinster, Faithful reminded her as he washed his glossy fur. "A warrior maiden, with no one to tie her down." "Oh, shut up," she said crossly. "Must I have everything I said as a girl thrown back in my face?" "You seemed positive," the cat taunted her wickedly. A serving girl peered in. "Excuse me, your ladyship. The king says you're awake. Will you come down? He's in his lordship's library." Alana tugged on one of the new gowns, listening with enjoyment to the rustle of lilac silk as she tugged a brush through her waving hair. She put on slippers as she went downstairs, nearly killing herself by hopping first on one foot, then the other. While she knew John rose quite early, it was rare for him to leave the palace at this hour. He must have an important errand. "Hello," he greeted her as she rushed into the library. "That's a pretty dress. Are you wearing it for anyone in particular?" "Yes," she snapped. "Myself." "Ouch. You should be nicer to your king, my champion." "No, I shouldn't," retorted Alana. "Duke Gareth says the champion must always be honest, even when others lack the courage." Jean smiled ruefully. "Lacking the courage to speak out has never been one of your problems, I admit." She looked at him over with some concern. "Oh, you're finally first swapping. Yay." I've been first a few times. I mean of tonight. That the first reward could only be done. It could only be done once per show per stream. So now no one else can choose to be first now until next stream, and where it starts all over again. Yeah. Maybe one day when I have all largest following I'll ever have, the people will be trying to race each other to be first. That's basically the idea behind it. Eventually, some interaction. Excuse me. I'm a bit sleepy. Where was I? Okay. Oh, there we were. Okay. Alana looked him over with some concern. Are you taking proper care of yourself? Eating right? Getting your sleep? It won't do for you to fall ill for your own coronation. I'll be fine. I've been up late these last week or so, working with a jewel. How is that going? Jonathan smiled. Very well. Tom has been a great help, finding spells and writing new ones for the jewel. Its power can be limitless if you know how to use it. He sighed. That's a temptation I'll always have to fight. The minute I start relying on the jewel to rule is the minute I court disaster. There's no substitute for a human touch. Do you always think like this? She wanted to know. Or do you rest sometimes and think about ordinary things with the rest of us? She couldn't tell him that she was in awe of him when he spoke of such things. If ever a man was born to be king, it's John, she thought. Of course I do, he replied tartly. There are plenty of ordinary things for me to think about. The future, and love, and... He stopped, turning red. How are things with you and Thayet? Alana inquired, interested. Jonathan scrubbed his face with his hands. Baffling, he sighed. I don't know if she goes riding with me to be polite, or because she likes my company. Good, his champion said. You're too sure of yourself with women. It won't hurt for you to have to struggle a little. John picked up Faithful and smoothed the cat's fur. Thank you, dearest Alana. I knew I could depend on you to solve my wounded pride. You always take care of your own pride, she reminded him. You've never needed me for that. By the way, what do you need me for this morning? Or are you here for the conversation? He shook his head. I'm here to talk with George, who is late. I thought your presence might soothe things. Smooth things. Soothe things. Blah. I'm already misreading words. You aren't angry with George, are you? She asked, concerned. Quite the opposite. The subject of their conversation strolled in. Must and sweat streaked. Sorry I'm late, he told Jonathan, collapsing into a big armchair. I had a bit of a scuffle with some hotheads. Nothing serious, but it delayed me. Alana poured George a cup of the fruit juice left on Miles's desk by the servants. He accepted it with a murmured word of thanks and drained it. She poured him another, checking him for wounds from beneath lowered lashes. He still knew what she was doing. I'm all in one piece, lass. He grinned. Never tell me you were worried. Alana scowled and prodded by his mocking tone. I wasn't, she retorted. George winked at her. That's my girl. Jonathan opened a manuscript case that lay on the desk before him and drew out 2 scrolls, both adorned with heavy seals and tied up with royal blue ribbons. Enough squabbling, you two. He passed the first to George. Alana noted the flowing writing was a court scribe's and not Jonathan's precise hand. George read for only a moment before he stood and tossed the parchment on the desk. His mouth was tight with anger, his face white. A royal pardon? What do you take me for, Majesty? His big hands were clenched. You've had fun with the lowborn, and now you'll throw me a bauble as a reward. I want no charity, Jonathan. Alana forced herself to sit, gritting her teeth. She could not interfere. Jonathan refused to be provoked. I'm not charitable, he said coolly. My father was. Now the results of certain of his charities threaten this kingdom. I wish he had been more just and less kind. He leaned back. You are the best teacher I had. Must I list what you made me learn? The reaches of men's trickery, making even those who mistrust me follow where I lead. The extent of human greed, the things that can't be bought, the need for ruthlessness, the ability to recognize and trust loyalty. John smiled grimly. I've often wondered, would I have survived the ordeal of the voice if you hadn't taken me under your wing? He tapped the pardon. The teacher earns his wage, he quoted, but it's more than that. This is to prevent the day when I have to sign a writ for your execution. George went to the bookshelves, staring at them. You needn't go so far. I've lost my taste for the rogue. I'll leave Tortal, settle elsewhere. When Alana would have started forward, John gripped her arm, keeping her beside him. Must you desert me when I need you? He asked the thief. Never again will I have any freedom, and our hero is easily recognized, which limits her movements. He smiled at Alana and let her go. She stayed where she was, tense. Jean continued. I need someone unusual to serve as my confidential agent. I'd trust such an agent implicitly. He must be clever and unorthodox. Someone who could venture among all classes without trouble. George looked at John, his face unreadable. What's the t'other writ, then? A grant of nobility and the title of baron. The deeds go to the lands and incomes traditionally belonging to the Lord of Pirate Swoop, a day's ride south of Port Kane. I know where the swoop is, George snapped. Why? Why must he go and make me respectable? A confidential agent needs a home and income, was the simple reply. His comings and goings, particularly at courts, cannot be remarked upon, which means he must be a noble. I want to travel, John, before I'm old and know nothing but the rogue. Jonathan smiled dryly. Is life so dull here? That you two think of nothing but roaming? Never mind. I need you to travel. I have to know what's outside my borders too. He let George think for a few moments before adding softly, I can't do this alone. Say you will. Both Alana and George heard the real pleading in his voice when he added, Please. George picked up the pardon, rereading it. He tapped a large seal in silvery wax. How in Mithros' name did you get my Lord Provost to sign? You'd be surprised. He's an amazing fellow. Jonathan's tone was filled with wry respect, making Alana wonder just what the Provost had done to put that feeling in his voice. George sighed, rolling up the parchment. With so many good reasons for me to accept, I'd be touched my wits to refuse. With a lopsided grin, he told Alana, he's grown up with a vengeance. I wonder if I shall be glad or sorry. Alana rode to the palace that evening as the sun set against the coastal hills. Paying her daily visit to Tom, when she left him, as always, she was troubled and uneasy. He looked no better than he had when she first returned to Chorus. If anything, he looked worse, and she was frightened. She'd also noticed that Faithful stayed away from Tom, and that Tom deliberately avoided the cats. To her, there was no better sign of something dangerously wrong. But when she questioned Faithful, he refused to answer. Instead of riding home or seeking out her friends, she and Faithful wandered idly through the maze of the palace, thinking about the coronation. It was hard to believe. Only 3 weeks remained. Their walk finally brought knights and cats to the Hall of Crowns. This room had one use. Tartalan sovereigns were consecrated to the realm there. At all other times, it was closed, its windows covered by heavy velvet curtains. They entered, smelling beeswax, spices, and incense. The servants had worked hard, cleaning the dust-covered draperies, polishing wood and metalwork until it shone, scrubbing the many-paned windows. Tiny votive candles winked on the altar, where a Mithrin priest and daughter of the goddess would bind Jonathan to the crown and the land. Her steps echoed to the ceiling as she walked around. Here were the wooden benches where the nobility sat. She climbed the stone risers that would seat the principal merchants and guildmasters and their families until she reached the top. Here were the city doors, the height of 5 men and the breadth of 7. These would be open during the coronation. All who could fit in behind the wealthy and powerful commoners would do so, relaying what happened inside to the less fortunate. Okay. Once crowned, Jonathan would mount darkness at the city doors to ride down to his new capital. Alana would stay a pace behind as he rode through the packed streets. Thank the goddess Moonlight isn't some skittish yearling and hard to control in a crowd, she reflected. Still, I can't think of things I'd rather be doing that day. She sat on a riser, almost on top of Faithful. Oh, stop it, she muttered when he yowled. You aren't hurt. Propping elbows on knees, she put her chin on her hands, staring at the distant altar. I'm getting old, she whispered. I should be excited about the coronation. I wish I knew for certain he'd be safe. That awkward moment where Alana thinks 19 or 20 is old. And it's like, I'm apparently ancient. You wanted to be a hero, Faithful said. Heroes have responsibilities. I'm not sure I want to be a hero anymore, Alana sighed. Then you are in trouble. The one thing you'll never be able to change. I know. I think about marrying, though. If I could do it and still see the world, it wouldn't be such a bad thing. Not if it was someone I liked and loved. Someone I could laugh with. You want to be a warrior and a woman. You want to travel and serve Jonathan. Can't you make up your mind about what you want? Complained the cat. Who says I can't have a little bit of each? She wanted to know. When she realized what she'd said, she began to grin. That's right. Why can't I? I've done pretty well, I think. I suppose so, he replied grudgingly. For a person. Mind, be careful in your choices. Particularly if you want to marry. You need someone who isn't as noble-minded as you are. Otherwise, you take yourself much too seriously. I won't always be around to correct you. I am not noble-minded. Yes, you are. You hide it well. But not everyone knows you like I do, and you think you can solve all the world's ills. You need someone who will cheer you up when you can't. Abruptly, Alana sneezed 4 times without stopping. She got to her feet, blinking teary eyes. Something took form before the altar. Something with substance, enough to obscure the votive candles. It was the goddess, her white skin and emerald eyes gleaming in the dark. Impossibly tall, she smiled at Alana. Of course she's here, Alana thought, awed. It's Beltane. Every couple tonight will ask her blessing on the summer crops. Then why has she come here? I am alone. Without a lover. I'm more worried about the coronation than the crops. Or children. Which, in this day and age, is a sort of crop. The gentle whisper nonetheless drove Alana to her knees. It took all her willpower to keep her hands from her ears. That voice still embodied huntress and hounds in the storm. In the hollow crowns, even the goddess's whisper rolled like thunder. Think I'm gonna curl up in bed in a moment? Yes, yes. Good plan. This is likely only gonna be a one chapter night as well. Wait. One sec.
Testing. Test. No,
That's not gonna work. Okay. We meet again, my daughter. You have traveled a long road since we last spoke. Surely you must be pleased now. Your labors of all these years, here and in the roof of the world, bear fruit. Your Jonathan is to be king. He will wear the Dominion jewel. Alana looked up eagerly. Then he will be king? Please, can you give me a sign? Some hint of what is to come? I sense trouble, but... My brother! What's wrong with Tom? The goddess shook her head. I may not answer these questions. The gods cannot reveal all things. Otherwise, where is men's right to choose their fates? Where is your right to choose? I think I chose well, Alana said, getting to her feet. How can I thank you for your favor? Your life is my thanks. I have guided you as best I can, but the time for guidance is past. You are fully grown into all your powers, Alana. The days to come are what you make of them. The coronation is a crossroad in time. End it to your will, if you have the courage. Your life is my thanks. It sounds like she's about to kill Alana. No, she's just warning her of the upcoming crossroads. Is like, live. Survive. Survive it. Alana's blood thrilled to the challenge, but her common sense made her beg. Just a hint? The goddess shook her head, smiling with amusement. I mean, it's kind of hard for her to give a hint because it's a crossroads. So, like, in theory, it's just a crossroads is kind of when the gods won't know the results until it happens. The goddess shook her head, smiling with amusement. The air brightened. Alana could see other figures before the altar. The shining warrior could only be Maethros, the divine protector. On the goddess's other side, hooded and cloaked, waited her brother, the black god. Alana knew him and bowed her greetings. The great god, the great head, nodded in reply. Behind them were arranged others, only some of whom she knew. The crooked god, his smile as wicked as George's own. The smith's god, the sea goddess. The array of immortals stretched on and on, but somehow she saw each face clearly. Awed and frightened, she covered her eyes like a Doi tribesman. Slowly, the glory faded. When she uncovered her eyes, she and Faithful were alone. She stayed where she was for a while, remembering what she had seen. At last, she shook her head. Ask a silly question. It always comes to this, Faithful remarked. A god can guide a mortal, nurture, teach. And yet there comes a moment when the god must stand away from the fosterling and let the inevitable happen. Why? She asked, curious. That's how the universe is fashioned, Faithful replied. There are moments when only a human can affect the outcome of events. She picked him up, letting him perch under her feet, her left ear. You mean they won't know what's going on? They don't know what's going to happen. People like you are the fulcrums in which the future turns. He gave her ear a nuzzle. Don't mess it up. I have a reputation to maintain. Leaving the Hall of Crowns, she was surprised to come face to face with Delia of Eldorn and Princess Josiane. Both wore plain dark gowns and veils over their hair. Plainly, they were as surprised as she was. Delia recovered quickly. Well, if it isn't Sir Alana, she sneered, her green eyes glinting. The woman who rides like a man. Taking her cue from Delia's words, Alana bowed as a man would. Princess Josiane, Lady Delia. I used to have to dance with her when she posed as a he. Delia told the tall blonde. I sensed something was not right. Funny, Alana said thoughtfully. As I recall, you chased me. He made a point at flirting with me because the men said I was a woman hater, and he wanted to make me fall in love with you. Liar! Delia hissed. Alana shrugged. As you like. I was taught not to question a lady's word. I'm told you were Jonathan's lover once, Josiane said abruptly, veiling her blue eyes with her lashes. Is that why he made you champion? Surprised by the attack from this unknown source, Alana took a step back. She clenched her hands, her nails biting into newly formed scars. She controlled her temper. I'm told you replaced me in his affections. For a little while, she replied sweetly. Why didn't he make you Prime Minister? Josiane's beautiful face changed into an ugly mask. No one gets the better of me, she hissed. Did you plan to be King's champion? Alana wanted to know. You don't have the training. Delia gripped Josiane's arm. Alana could see her blood-red nails digging into the princess's flesh. I don't waste time in conversations with sluts, Josiane, she snapped. Neither should you. She literally dragged the princess away. Quite a feat, and so delicate-looking a woman. She could do harm, Alana told Liam and Miles later that night as they sat over at Brandy. Outside, they could hear the sounds of the Beltane festival. I'm no expert, but that Josiane is crazy. There's bad blood in the Copper Owl Kings. Liam drawled. Too much inbreeding. Liam drawled, his eyes sleepy. They birth the mad one every generation. Josiane's uncle is locked in a tower somewhere. It comes from being in an island kingdom. Too much inbreeding. I think it might be a good idea if the provost's spies keep an eye on her, Alana said, frankly. I don't trust her. He has her watched, Mal said reassuringly. Any foreign noble is suspect at a time like this. Alana fidgeted in her chair. I wish the coronation was over. The waiting is getting on my nerves. Once he's sealed to the crown and to the land, it'll be hard to dislodge, Liam yawned. And if the jewel's all it's supposed to be, so much the better. In the meantime, he can still find no traces of plot or plotters. Miles sighed. With people starting to arrive for the ceremonies, it'll be hard to spot fighters coming to take part in an overthrow. George and I ride through the city every day, Liam said unexpectedly. The Lord Provost and Duke Gareth, too. Between the four of us. Thank you for the follow? Question mark? Thank you for the butt. True. Thank you for your butt. Yeah, just keep Banhammer ready. I'm thinking it's questionable follow. Where was I? Right there. The Lord Provost and Duke Gareth too. Between the four of us, any group of warriors will be easy to spot. Provost's men stand alert as well. He noticed Lioness staring at him and grinned. Do you think you could leave me out of your worries? I'm still your friend. I won't sit idling when there's a hint of a fight in the offing. Elena smiled gratefully at the dragon. It is a weight off my mind, knowing you're keeping an eye on things too. George glanced into the library. Ah, there you all are. Miles, I have another visitor to cast upon your tender mercies. He bowed gracefully, ushering the guest into the room. Master C. Cham! Alana cried, jumping up. The tiny old man in the orange worn by Mithrin adept smiled and held out gnarled hands for her to kiss. And lay my iron arm, he said, nodding cheerfully to the bowing dragon. What a pair of warriors to grace your house, Miles. Alana looked from C. Cham to Liam to her father, baffled. You know Liam? She asked. The red-headed man winked at her. You know Miles? I traveled more when I was younger, Miles explained. See, Cham, have a seat. George, thank you for bringing him. Where was he? Cornered near the water gate by a set of young louts. Drunken fools wanted him to dance for the goddess. George said, pouring a tea for the Mithran priest. There's no respect for old men anymore. I've danced for the goddess in my day, Seicham admitted with a grin. Not after such a journey, though. He drank his tea. I'm sorry to be so long in answering your summons, George Cooper. I had 1,000 loose ends to tie up in the city of the gods once I realized I was truly going. Also, I didn't cover so much ground as I did when I was young. I had to be carried in litter. A sad come down for me when I rode so well. Why are you here? Alana wanted to know. Sicham put down his glass, his face tired. George tells me your brother is ill. Desperately so, perhaps. He asked me to come to Master Tom's aid. Now all we have to do is convince Tom he needs it, admitted George. At first, Tom refused to consider talking to his former master. His rage on learning why Sicham was in the city scared Alana. Not so much because she feared his temper, but because she heard despair and fear in Tom's voice as he screamed at her. This made her determined that Sicham should meet with her twin. Tom resembled a skeleton now. His skin was dry and cracked, with the heat that ate at him from within. A week before the coronation, Tom gave in. Even Roger was banned from their meeting, a ban he accepted gracefully. When Tom and Sicham instructed the palace servants to bring their meals to Tom's rooms, Alana gave up waiting for a word. They would send for her when they needed her. She had a number of mundane tasks that needed to be taken care of in the days remaining. Visiting the palace scribes, she had a new will drawn up. The last had been done prior to her ordeal. They were disturbed to see such a document when death should be the last thing on her mind. But she could not shake uneasy feelings about the coronation. She wanted nothing left to chance, just in case. She took her mail to be polished and her sword to be sharpened. While neither her gold mail nor lightning required the extra attention, she felt better for having it done. When the hairdresser came to style Elena's hair for a court party, Alana asked him to cut her hair as well. Everyone but George and Burry cried out when they saw her. The coppery locks had fallen past her shoulders. Were trimmed back to her earlobes, and the short cut she'd worn as a page. She shrugged at the protests. I couldn't keep it out of my eyes, she explained. Finally, one of the palace servants came to House Olau, 4 days after Tom and Sicham had cloistered themselves, to ask Alana to visit her brother. She did so, wondering what delightful surprise the sorcerers had ready for her. Tom was pacing when she arrived. Alana dropped into a chair with a grateful sigh. It's baking outside. About as much as you're baking inside, she added to herself, noting that his skin was peeling and his lips bled. Tom looked at her quizzically. Tell me, sister mine, when is your dragon going to make an honest woman of you? She made a face at him, thinking he had to feel a little better if he was nosing into her affairs. He isn't. We were done before I came home. He doesn't like magic. Silly man. What about Jonathan then? Everyone knows you two used to be lovers. Even if he is a prig about other things. Maybe I should talk to him. Having sullied your reputation, can't be allowed to abandon you. You have a good name. I'm not amused, Tom. So I'm like, don't let the line end with me. I mean, even if he wasn't dying, the line would end with him from his side of things being being gay. I mean, they're twins, yeah. I mean, like, if his direct line. I think you should take the thief. If you must take someone, you marry George, I'll give you my blessing. If I marry anyone, I'll let you know. Can you change the subject? She shifted in the big chair, hooking her legs over one arm. I love you dearly, Tom, but you're prying. I don't appreciate it. He grinned. What sort of twin would I be? I don't pry. That made her smile. Sitting on the edge of his desk, he tugged his beard as he looked her over. It's changed you, the jewel. Time was you'd have lost your temper with me for calling him a prig or teasing you about the dragon. You only save your anger now for big things. Is that it? One of my brothers is his daughter. The other technically already had a kid because his twin did. I mean, the name will continue on, ish. Well, not necessarily, because if the daughter marries and takes her husband's name. Something with the child has a different last name. Oh, okay. They take the wife's name? Ah. Yeah. True. They both chose a different last name together. Oh, okay. Nice. Which I honestly think is super cute. Yeah, it is. And it's one of the easier ways of changing names. I mean, go get like, else I can just get married. I see if I can get married. I get. I can't say shouldn't have it. No. Ugh. Okay, what am I? Where am I? Okay, alright. Only save your anger for big things. Is that it? Tom, do you mind? She snapped. I didn't come here to be analyzed by my own twin. Thank you very much. He looked away. Sorry, he murmured shyly. I forgot how much I dislike it. And you have changed. For the better, I think. Thank you, she whispered, touched by the rare compliment. There was a rap on the door. It opened to admit Sicham. There you are, Lady Elena. Now we may begin. Elena looked at Tom, feeling the first prickling of mistrust. Begin what? She wanted to know. We've been going over the books in Jonathan's sorcery library, Tom explained, and we found some possibilities. For now, I want to drain off a little of the power that burdens me. Without it, I can think clearly. Because you're my twin, you're the best person to carry it. Wait a minute, Alana began, rising out of her chair. What if it poisons me like you've been poisoned? Even the beginning hedge witch knows you can carry your own gift and no more. That would be true if you spoke of weeks or months or years. This transfer is for a week. Our spells will enclose it. Keep it from leaking into your gift. Sicham reassured her. We are sure of it. He met Alana's eyes, smiling. Alana stared at the sorceress for a long moment. A week? No more, Tom said. The most important of the infusions I need takes that long to make. Alana bit her lip. It was so thin. It'll help? It won't interfere with my participation in the coronation. It will help, Tichan affirmed. It will not interfere. You won't even notice it after the first night. Unless you try to use your gift, of course. I would not advise it. She sat down with an exhausted sigh. What must I do? Alana kept to House Allow for the next few days while her head buzzed and her stomach lurched. Grimly, she continued her exercises with Liam in spite of it, fearing to slack off for even a day. At last, her body adjusted to the new burden, but she refused to do so tiny a spell as the one for lighting candles, fearful of what might happen. Visiting Tom once more, she was glad she'd given in. He looked better already. Together with Sicham, he had embarked on the beginnings of an intricate spell. It would be finished several days after the coronation, and, if Tom was lucky, it would purify his magic. 3 days before the coronation, Jonathan summoned Alana to the palace to discuss how the jewel would fit into the ceremonies. It seems like a silly thing to worry about, he admitted with a smile. But the master of protocol wouldn't let me alone until I agreed to do it this way. You see, I can't take it up when I'm crowned, or when I get the scepter and the great seal. Those are all Tortellin things, and the jewel isn't Tortellin. Alana had to laugh. Poor John. Maybe I should have given it to you for your birthday or something. The king-to-be grimaced. Very funny. Here's how we will do it. When you come to give me your oath as King's Champions. King's Champion, say this. He gave her a parchment on which her oath was written. It read very like the one she'd taken as a knight. At the end, in scarlet ink, were the lines, which she read aloud. Sire, as token of my fealty, I gift you and your heirs with this most awesome artifact. John, do I really have to say awesome artifact? Jonathan nodded, not bothering to hide his amusement. Wonderful, Alana muttered as she read further. For which I have gone in quest to the most distant corner of our world. Through peril I have borne it for the glory of Tortall, for the glory of King Jonathan. Accept, I beg, the symbol of my devotion to realm and crown, the Dominion Jewel. John, is this some kind of joke? John shook his head. Wait till you hear what I have to say in reply. I'd better go. The delegation from Tyra is waiting for me. Don't forget to memorize your lines. An evil grin he left to land a scowl at her revised oath. She shoved it in her pocket. I guess I'm too old to put a frog in his bed, she muttered as she headed for the stables. Awesome artifact, indeed. My voice is... This isn't so much my voice dying as my throat is killing me, so one chapter today it is. And we're both sleepy. So, with that, we'll end stream tonight. Tomorrow will be the... Not tomorrow. Tomorrow, are we doing It Takes Two? Maybe? But next week, we will be doing final chapter and epilogue. I'll try to squeeze those into all in one stream, because the week following that is I have top surgery, in which case I won't be streaming for the last week of February and probably the first couple weeks of March. And Wednesday you're gonna do a midday stream. Woo! And I'll try to do a Dead by Daylight stream on Wednesday. Because I want to do that again. Womp womp. Womp womp. Anywho. Everyone have a good night. And I'll see you all tomorrow with some It Takes Two with Off Poppin'. Rawr.